dealing with
No,
super important stuff.
he's MIA.
He's MIA. So and good for him in a way. He's doing something that's really cool. Maybe he'll talk about it on a future video. But one of the things that has come up a few times in the last, I don't know, April seemed to be the month for it. For a while it seemed people were on Zoom calls and Teams calls and stuff, and they didn't want to be on video. And then recently it seems like, hey, let's like go back on camera again. And you probably do, and I do, get a lot of comments about like my background.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty good. And the quality of the picture looks pretty good. Today we're going to talk about some very cheap and then some not so cheap, if you want to go further into this, double down on it, ways to make your presence on certainly like streaming camera sessions like Zoom calls and webinars and whatever better without really spending very much money at all. And so you've probably got your own opinions on this. I'm going to jump in with one and
Okay.
then you tell me about the one you use the most. For me, this one will cost literally nothing, but it's anything that you can do so that you look straight into the camera. So that could be as simple as at home using your monitor but putting the camera on top of it, or if you have a laptop, put books and stuff under your laptop. I mean, it doesn't make it easy to type, of course, but if you're on a call and you don't need to type, then raising up the camera so it's roughly at eye level makes a huge difference and doesn't actually cost anything. It's very over time, it's very unnatural. And it's one of the things that has contributed to Zoom fatigue. It's unnatural to have to talk to someone who's looking, sort of this way or off to the side or down while you're talking to them constantly, day after day. So, number one, absolutely free. Anything that helps you look directly into the camera. It makes such a huge difference. Now, understand, you will over time kind of develop a peripheral vision skill where you're not seeing the person. Like I'm not actually seeing Dr. V right now. I'm
Mm.
looking straight into a camera, and that's a little bit further away, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if he does something on camera that looks interesting, then that's my cue to look down at my screen because I'm using a laptop today as opposed to a monitor, and to be able to sort of pay attention. But generally speaking, people aren't doing anything on screen that you need to actually look at, but it looks way better for them if you're looking at them. So, Dr. V, tell me about your
I
background, 'cause I've
I
seen
would
this
say
everywhere.
without staring at them, because I've been admonished sometimes even by patients that, when I would look at them, they say, "Oh my god," a couple of them freak out like, "You're looking right through me."
Right.
And it's just 'cause the piercing blue eye thing, if I'm really concentrating, it freaks people out a little. So I've been also admonished from some folks. So I have my little green dot on my MacBook Pro, which
Right.
is ancient in computer lands. It's about 6.5 years old. And yeah, Dean and John are all trying to get me to change my computer into something more
Yes.
modern, like an M1 chip. But I don't have a fancy camera like Dean has set up. So I just look at the little green dot. That's the thing that I do. And by the way, when you talk about propping up things, oh, this is a little heavy, but I'll show you. I have two boxes like this.
Yeah.
And that's what's under my computer right now is the second of the two boxes. This one's
Gotcha.
really heavy because it's full of junk. Um, but that has helped me a lot because I know that for many times, especially if I'm on location, meaning like I've got to go to the library because my wife is shooting a bunch of photos and she wants, her creative space,
Right.
that I will, you have that awkward thing where you can't lift up your computer. And so as a result, you kind of trying to avoid the idea that people are going to be staring up at your nostrils through your nostrils, or that you're going to get all jowly,
Right.
because that's not a really good look either. But the background, as you
Tell me
mentioned here,
about your background, because 'cause I've seen these. They become
yeah,
pretty popular. People get them on Amazon or some furniture store,
no,
and
I
it
think
just
these.
hides the rest of the room, right?
I'm not sure if it was Pier 1 or if it was one of these other types of, World Market or something like
Right.
that. I think they're made in either Malaysia, Indonesia, maybe even India. I'm not sure, but
Somehow just made out of
somewhere in
bamboo and some fabric.
somewhere, yeah, no, they're not bamboo, but they're these screens, and I have one that happens to be black,
Right.
and John has one that is brown.
Mm.
And since I'm semi colorblind, I really thought we had the identical one.
Oh, yeah.
But also backgrounds. One of the things that I noticed too is that I will sometimes just hide all the books and things. Although I do like little props in the back, like
Yes.
that one right there. That's like my favorite, the thinking emoji pillow. And last week we also used the angry emoji pillow for
Yeah, I
one
saw
of
that
our
one. Yeah.
one of our broadcasts. And so I do like props to a certain extent, as long as they're not a major distraction.
Yeah.
I'm not. We talked about a little bit earlier before we went live about green screens, and
Yeah,
in many
and
ways, I'm not a
virtual
big fan.
backgrounds as well,
Yeah,
right?
the virtual backgrounds. Yeah, I
That
prefer the real background because I haven't.
yes.
And some people will put a picture or a painting or something behind them. That looks really good too.
Yeah,
If you have a large poster or something that's not terribly reflective.
right.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
virtual backgrounds, of course, are free, but don't use them. They look so terrible, and
cheesy. Yeah.
there's no way to make those things look good. And I mean, I don't even have like a real background. I mean, it's real. It's physically real, but it's just it's apparently it's just a wall, but it's
Yeah.
painted. It happens to be painted black. I can do that because I'm in a studio and I did it before my wife caught me. So I'm making
Before she
video.
caught you.
So now we're committed to it. So we're in, right? But I could have I also before that I just got it from Amazon. I got like I don't know, like a 10 foot by 6 foot
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
flexible cloth.
Mhm.
It's basically just like a thin piece of metal that's a little bit like bouncy rubbery, and it just gets behind me, and it would just be just a black cloth background. Cloth because it's not reflective. It's one of the main reasons. This is
I
actually
do. I do.
non-reflective studio paint.
Yeah, I do have a green screen setup,
Yeah,
with a
me too, but
frame
I
and
don't
all.
use it.
I don't use it. And so you'd think if you pay
Don't
that much
use
money
green
for it, you
screen
use it.
and don't use virtual backgrounds. And everything here is real. Like these are real.
Well, chroma,
Hey, I
but
gotta
some
tell you
people,
something.
yeah.
Uh, do you know what that is? This thing
I
here.
got first I got to put my glasses on to see what you're showing me.
I was in a meeting once, and when it wound down, someone asked me like how it was back here, and I said, "How do you keep those two iPhones stood up and on all the time? I don't see any cords." Because they just saw
Oh
the,
my
the
gosh.
colored squares and they thought it was like
Oh,
I can't
that's so
do that.
interesting.
But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, do you recognize it? Do you know what this is?
Oh, is that an old? Wait, it's a wallet. Wait,
No,
is it a?
it's not at all. This is what's called a color checker. So
Oh,
it
a
is
color checker. Wow.
stupidly expensive. Don't buy this, by the way, if you're watching this video.
Okay.
I just happen to own it. What a color checker does, because once in a while someone will say, like, what is that? What a color checker does is you buy it, it's like $100, and it's just made out of plastic. I mean, there's nothing really important or useful about it, except that these colors are true colors. Like
Got
that
it.
is true black and true white and RGB green, RGB red, RGB, whatever. And so later, if I happen to leave the wrong lights on in this room, because it's sort of an older house and it actually has some fluorescent lights in the ceiling, a drop ceiling that I never use. And
Mm.
I mean, I use the light. I don't use the lights. Obviously, I use the ceiling. I don't have any choice there. And so if I ever have any lights on that are wrong, and so everything looks sort of like yellowish or whatever, I can go into any software that I'm using and I say, hey, this is true black, this is true red, and it will recalculate all the colors based on what this is. And so like like magic, everything becomes nice looking again.
Now, do you also
I
do
use it
that to
here
color
because I
correct
don't
your
have to like
monitor?
show it at the beginning. I just leave it there and it's always in frame.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you ever use that to color correct your monitor or no?
Um, no, I've
Not
never
really.
used it to color correct my monitor. It's a
Okay.
good point though.
Because I know that some people, so when if you're in photography, you want to make sure that what appears on the web is a
Right.
true color relative, but every monitor is slightly different. So that's what
Right.
makes it kind of rough. So
Yeah. No, for that kind of work, I have a separate big monitor that
got it.
has like true color representation
I mean,
from
I
I
like
forget who made it.
backgrounds too.
Samsung actually made it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, backgrounds too, just being outside, finding a nice scene
Oh yeah,
behind
that'd
you
be
is very
fantastic.
useful. Yeah.
Yeah, as long
I
as
mean,
you
it's like,
can manage the audio, it's great.
well, that's the problem right now. So this
You'll pick up all
lately,
the wind, right?
yeah, I pick up tons of wind in the afternoon
Yeah.
because as the sun gets down to setting, there's a rush of cold air from the Pacific Ocean inland towards the desert, and I need what everybody refers to as a dead cat, something a
Right.
little
Yeah.
muffle to muffle the sound. But I haven't found one that's small enough to fit on the iPhone. I might just put some fur on there from an old coat or something, and hopefully that might do it. I don't know.
Okay, so let's see what's next. We talked about anything that lets you look directly into the camera, anything
Yeah.
that is a physical background, nice one, not
Mhm.
a virtual one. And then the third one, anything that lets you move the camera away from you works great. So this could be as cheap as buying a $5 sort of USB extension cable, like a 6 foot one. Get them on
Yeah.
Amazon for $5 or $10.
Yeah.
And basically, all it does is it lets you plug a USB cable into one side and then plug it into your computer on the other side, but it adds a whole bunch, like any extension cord would. And then you just get a $20 Amazon Basics brand tripod. And you
Yeah.
just, it'll just I don't know if you've ever noticed this, anyone who's ever watching this now or in the future, but all of these webcams tend to have a little sort of brass looking like hole, like a female version of
Yeah.
where you can like, and that's so you can screw it into a tripod, because a tripod
Right.
has the corresponding part that screws into it. And so you can
Yeah.
just take that, put it on a tripod, and if you have the room in your room, move it away from you and use the extension cord to plug it in. So anytime you can move your camera away from you, you're going to have
Yeah.
a much easier time looking straight at the camera. And
Very interesting.
also, I mean, you're just using the microphones usually in your laptop anyway, and or
Yeah, usually.
instead
I
of in
mean,
the camera.
I've blown out the speakers in my
Yeah,
laptop. So over time, but I also use my little Heil microphone.
yeah,
But and that's been really good. But I will tell you that the microphone on a simple iPhone, like an iPhone 11 or so, is magnificent for sound,
yes,
providing you don't have the wind.
right. But
So,
anything that lets you move your camera, just it's five
mhm,
dollars or $10 for a cable, and it's 19.99 for the it's literally called Amazon Basics brand
yeah.
tripod, and it lets you move your camera, your removable webcam, away from you, and it makes a big difference in how you look on camera.
I'm thinking webcams versus SLRs because many of my friends use
Well,
use SLRs for that, and
my
it's not cheap.
next one is if
Yeah.
you're gonna move up,
Yeah.
this little camera is specific, it's a Sony camera, it's called a ZV-1, so Zulu Victor 1, the
Okay.
Sony ZV-1.
ZV-1. Okay.
This little camera, if you I think you can buy it used on Amazon, or they still make
Uh-huh.
them new for, like, I don't know, between 4 and
Uh-huh.
$600, so a
Yeah.
bit of an investment, but it's
Yeah. Yeah.
made for streaming. Like, it'll stream directly to YouTube by itself.
Yeah.
But what it does is it's got a couple of different options. It will actually blur the background around you instead of you
Nice.
relying on your software to do it. It's got it's got settings inside that facilitate connecting it to Zoom and Teams and other stuff. And it's got what because this is the one I buy for clients when I put together
Mhm.
a rig for them looking in the camera to
Mhm.
do their live events. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's not expensive, right? Relatively speaking. Great autofocus. Battery lasts a long time.
Huh.
It has what I call the nuclear option. So I've got like a button customized in here where if all else fails and they just can't get the streaming and the video feed to work, they press a button, they click OK, and it just acts like a webcam, like a dumb webcam. But at least
Ah.
they're on and they're live
Yeah.
and everything's
Yeah.
working. Right, and then there's, one other reason. What's the other reason that I recommend Sony cameras? Oh, yeah. So I've recently, in the last 9 months or so, especially for clients, made the move to Sony cameras, and this is the Sony camera I'm looking at right now. It's not the
So
ZV-1.
not a Canon, the
Right.
Sony.
Well, I was Canon for many years, and, like, right next
Got
to
it.
this Sony camera I'm looking at is a Canon camera, also on a
Yeah.
tripod, and I use it for different stuff, but overall, I use the Sony ones now, and I recommend them for one reason. There are very few Canon cameras, but almost all newer Sony cameras, you don't need a separate AC adapter. They'll
Uh,
charge just by plugging in the regular USB port that you would use to
right.
connect to a computer anyway. So when
Right.
they're connected to your computer, they're charging, which means they'll stay
Mhm.
on indefinitely if you're streaming.
Yeah, because I've had friends who use the Canon cameras and the camera goes out periodically
Yeah,
during a live stream,
yeah.
and
And actually,
that's a real bummer.
I tried multiple people said, "Well, like an AC adapter for a Canon camera is not that much. It's only like $20, $30. If you buy
Yeah.
it from Canon, it's like $120." Well, the reason you have to eventually buy one from Canon is because all the cheaper ones introduce electrical noise in case
Yeah.
you're ever like, especially if you're recording. And so you get this sort of crackling kind of electrical noise. They
Yeah.
wear out very quickly. Oh, by the way, unlike most Sony cameras, this one has a reticulating side screen. Most Sony cameras actually it flips up. I don't like that, especially if you
Yeah.
want to connect a microphone or anything to it. But
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it
yeah.
uses a Canon style flips out screen, so very
That's
handy.
cool. Yeah,
So
I'm
yeah,
going to
I
give a
really
shout out.
recommend this camera. It's almost bulletproof for streaming.
So it's Z V as
This,
in Victor
yeah,
100.
Zulu Victor 1, the Sony
Zulu
Zulu
Victor.
Victor 1.
Excuse me. I didn't know we are getting
Yeah.
all tribal with the Zulu thing, but that's
Well,
very
you know,
military. Very military.
but no,
Hey,
like
I want to.
highly recommend it if you're gonna like. And again, on the one hand, let's say it costs $600. I don't know. Cameras
Yeah,
are pricing's kind of weird right now because of the semiconductor,
right.
shortage. But let's say it costs $600. Well, depending on how much you're streaming, that price comes down pretty quickly. When you
Mm,
start factoring in what it costs per hour to use it. I mean, I know a lot of people who buy Mac computers, like MacBooks, just because, oh, it's a MacBook, I got to have it, whatever. But the thing is, those computers last forever. I mean, forever. My first
almost,
MacBook
almost
is
forever.
11 years old and it's still used every day. Not by
Yeah,
me, but it's used by one of my kids every day. And so you
I
take the
have.
number of hours you use it and divide that into the
Yeah,
price, and you
yeah,
realize that it's cheaper to buy really good quality stuff
I
once in a
agree.
while than to buy cheaper stuff over and over and over.
I agree. Hey, so I want to give a shout out to Cassandra Jolie, who's watching today. She's one of my very good friends. We've actually done some live, or contemplating doing some live streaming, and
Yeah.
she's thanking us for talking about cameras because she happens to be in the market for one right now. So
Yeah.
perhaps the Zulu Victor 100 would be to your liking,
No,
Cassandra.
it's just 1, not 100.
Oh, I thought it was 100.
No, it's
I'm
ZV-1.
just projecting the ones in the future.
Yeah, exactly right. You're going 99 generations beyond, right?
Yeah,
Well,
So-
and then, by the way, I can wholeheartedly recommend the camera that I'm using now that I got in January, although I don't
Mhm.
recommend that anyone watching this buy it because it's not cheap. But this is the Sony A7, and it's the latest generation, so it's called the A7 IV as opposed to the A7 III or whatever. It's
The
a
Ace.
phenomenal camera.
Huh.
Phenomenal.
Y it's interesting about cameras too, because I mean, I think the trend has been going away from the regular SLRs to the mirrorless cameras. Is
Yeah,
that
this is a
correct? Is that
mirrorless
what
camera.
that's
It's a
mirrorless?
full
Okay.
frame
Yeah.
mirrorless camera,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
uses USB-C.
C. CC,
Yeah, for
senor.
the latest one, and, it'll plug into anything. It fully charges right off my laptop. It's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it's just amazing, but it's expensive. Don't buy this camera. Not if
Right.
you're interested in this topic for this video, that's not the camera for you. Again, it's very much
Yes.
along the lines of, I'm using this camera many hours a day. It will
Right.
last for years. Mirrorless cameras have virtually no moving parts in them, so there's not much
Yeah.
to wear out. So it makes a big difference over time. And then the last thing, unless you have something else you wanna recommend, I have one more thing that I'd recommend to people.
I
If
just no, I just I think in general, I concur with what you had talked
Yeah,
about earlier, which is the green screens. I haven't seen any really great green screen works, and even Zoom and some of these others have these virtual things behind, but people are coming in and out, and if
right.
you're wearing certain objects,
Yeah.
it's extremely disturbing and
Plus, yeah,
distracting.
whenever they move their head, you get that
Yeah.
thing happening around their head, right? It's just not good. No. But then if
So
you're going to be looking at a camera a lot, if you're gonna be making videos or
yeah,
webinars or,
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of stuff, I
yeah,
can since you're already gonna have maybe, a tripod, and especially if you're gonna buy a camera like this, but a webcam behind on the tripod would be just as fine, is you can for the last several years, you've been able to get these. It's kind of generous to call them a teleprompter setup, but really they are kind of a teleprompter setup.
mhm,
It's not teleprompter like you've ever seen if you've seen what happens in a TV studio or what. It's nothing like
right,
that. It's just a hinge, a strong hinge, and on the bottom part of the hinge is just a plastic, like flat plastic platform where you would lay an iPad screen up. And then on this part of the hinge, which is right in front of your camera lens, so the camera would be like here, it's a one-way mirror. So I'm looking at one of those things right now, and I'm looking at a mirror. I can't see myself. I'm actually because it's angled down. I'm actually looking at my own floor. But the camera is shooting through. The camera I'm using right now is shooting through that mirror. And if I use a teleprompter app, there's all kinds of free ones, and the one I recommend is called Prompt Smart Pro. It's about
okay,
$20. And it's a teleprompter app where once I write something, what I want to say, like even word for word, or I write it for clients, they put it on an iPad, turn on the iPad, it just, it's pointing up at the ceiling, but the sort of mirror thing is angled and picking up part of it. And the reason I like Prompt Smart Pro is previously with teleprompter apps on an iPad or a phone, you hit play and it would just start scrolling at a continuous space. And that freaked me out. It freaks out most people because if you miss something or you stumble, you can't catch up. But the
right,
newer ones, I'll use voice recognition.
Oh, yeah.
So as you read the words that are on screen, they will advance. And if you stop saying what's on screen to answer a question or ad lib or something, then they'll stop scrolling until you come back and start saying what's on screen. And if you speed up, it speeds up. And if you slow down, you slows down. So it's very natural sounding and looking.
Hmm.
And even if you don't use a teleprompter, the app itself is worth buying and just put your, words or script or something into there. Because on a lot of times with a Zoom meeting or a webinar even, you're not on camera, but
Yeah.
you can have the teleprompter app there, and you can just read what's there, and it'll scroll naturally. No one else sees it's there, and it's just sort of on a stand, or you stood it up next to your laptop or whatever, and it makes a huge difference. And the difference actually is very noticeable in transcripts. So a lot of the
Hmm.
times when someone doesn't use a script, they just want to talk about the slides that are on screen or whatever. I still send it out to a transcription service like rev.com, rev.com.
Hmm.
I think it's like $1.25 a minute or $1.50 a minute of
Hmm.
recording. So if like a 5-minute recording would be 5 times $1.25 or $1.50, whichever it is they're charging these days.
Hmm.
And they give it back to you, but of course it's literally transcripted. So every and so on are all part of the text. And there's such a huge difference. You don't realize how many times you say crutch words like that. I mean, one of my crutch words is right. I seem to say right quite a lot.
Mine
With a
is
script,
okay.
it's never there.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
and so is another one I think for me. Every single speaker has crutch words. Like
Yeah.
it's the way it's human nature. But with transcripts, you can see the difference versus someone who read from a script and someone who just talked. Their stuff is full of these interruptions and little like ahs and ums and this junk, like verbal junk. And the people who read from a script have an almost beautiful transcript right out of the gate. And so you can imagine what that's like for an audience. An audience is getting the maximum amount of information properly crafted in the minimum amount of time
Yeah.
versus watching someone sort of improv their way through slides. Makes a big
The
difference.
the challenge that I have is that improv is my best stuff. And so it's like but that requires sifting through a bunch of chaff in order to get the kernels of
Yeah.
wheat,
Yep, that's how
you
it
know?
works. It's human nature. And
Yeah.
I'm actually not saying that one's better than the other. It depends on the context and the audience,
Right.
but for the most part, it's a much cleaner experience with more delivered to the audience per minute
Yeah.
with a
Yeah,
script
I'd
than it is using just improv.
yeah, I'd prefer not to give my audience a dirty experience.
There you go.
Try to keep it PG-13 at least, so
So let's see. Do what you can to look directly into the camera. Use a
yep.
physical background, please. No
Mm,
virtual ones or green screens.
mm-mm.
Use an external webcam
Mhm.
screwed onto a tripod, both cheap,
Mhm. Mhm.
to get the camera away from you a bit. That helps a lot. And then we showed this like little camera. By the way, like obviously, there's no sponsoring or affiliate or anything.
Nothing like that.
This is literally the camera. I bought 6 of these last year for
Good
clients. This is
God.
literally the camera that we use for live presentations for like it's a big company, B2B. This is the camera.
Oh, okay. I thought you just liked them. They're cheaper by the half dozen or
No,
something.
actually they are cheaper if you buy more than one, but,
Ah,
no, that's not the reason.
got it.
And then you can get a cheap teleprompter set up from Amazon where it's basically a hinge, a piece of plastic, and a one-way mirror, and screw that onto the tripod, screw the camera onto that, and all of a sudden, you have all kinds of options.
Interesting. So Cassandra's asking a question here today. She's
Mhm.
asking, could you briefly describe the benefits of the mirrorless camera?
Oh, hey, there's John. We should have John answer that question.
John,
John,
Hey,
good
could
timing.
you please describe the benefits of the mirrorless camera? Cassandra Jolie would like to know, and you're the guy
You're
in
the
the know.
guy.
the benefits of the mirrorless camera. Well, let's see. The biggest benefit with the mirrorless camera is you actually see through the lens what you're going to be shooting and taking a photo of. Where you don't get that with the digital camera, you just have a rangefinder that you're looking through and capturing it, but you actually see through the lens exactly what you're capturing.
Yeah.
So
There's
that's the
a
benefit of the
If you're
reflex.
streaming, there are a couple of other advantages to mirrorless cameras.
Yeah.
One is the body size tends to be smaller. because it doesn't
Correct.
have the mirror is a
Much.
mechanical device inside the camera that has to flip up and flip down
Yeah.
in between shots and stuff,
Mhm.
and so you need a
Yes.
camera body that's big enough for that. It's not
Right.
necessarily heavier if it's a mirror camera or lighter if it's a mirrorless
Usually
camera.
it is heavier if
They're
it's a mirror.
usually lighter,
Mirror. A
but they don't
mirror
have
camera
to
is
be,
usually heavier.
but they're always smaller.
The mirrorless are always
Yeah, I
smaller.
think you're on two opposite sides talking about the
Yeah.
different cameras.
The
So this
mirror
is a mirrorless camera, and you can get small,
always
very
smaller.
capable cameras like this in
Yeah.
mirrorless. You couldn't
Yes.
accommodate a mirror inside one of these.
Yes.
So they
The other,
tend to be smaller. They do, like John said, not always, but do tend to be lighter, which is
yes.
nice. And there's one, well, of course, they're quieter because there's no mirror that's going. The mirror
Well,
that sound you're used to
flicks
hearing,
up.
sort of in the movies, a chink, 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 chink. That's the mirror going crazy.
Mirror
You don't
flicking
get
up.
any of that with a mirrorless camera.
The other thing I would think too is because there's a motor holding the mirror up, your battery life is going to be less.
Yeah, they do tend to get slightly better battery life as
So you're
well.
going to get better battery life if you
Or
use
they
them
don't
both.
get better battery life, but it's because the battery can be smaller because the body's smaller.
Right. So
So
now that we've wrapped all of that up, my personal opinion is get a mirrorless camera. They're more portable. You can take them with you on the road anywhere that you go. Um, uh,
they have fewer things inside to break.
yeah,
There's
fewer
almost no
things to
moving
break.
parts.
A lot of them are
Mirrorless.
made so that they connect, and you can actually use them to do things like this.
Right.
So you can actually use them to do streaming.
And then
Where,
one other reason
yeah,
is that this is advances in mirrorless camera over the last several years means that virtually every major camera manufacturer is winding down its mirrored business and moving into mirrorless anyway. So you're actually buying into a
yeah,
platform that's shrinking and will eventually die, except for some specialty cameras.
yeah.
Everything's
Except for some
mirrorless going forward.
specialty, right? For the most part, I'm not quite sure mirror is going to die that quickly. But I remember back in the film days, we all said, "Oh, they'll never find a way to replace film." And now,
Right.
not only have they replaced film, but the CCDs in the cameras are so much faster that they're actually faster than film. Which brings me to another thing. Whatever camera you buy, you want to make sure you've got a very large CCD in it. And some of the major manufacturers that make their own CCDs are Fuji,
You want to tell everyone what that
yeah,
is?
Yeah, we need the explanation of the
sure.
initials.
So let's look at it like a film camera in that your CCD is the film in the back of the camera that captures the image. So that's what's accepting the light in through the lens, and that's where your image is
But
captured.
what do
So
the
you're talking about the
initials
sensor.
stand for? CCD. A camera color capture device or something or something.
No,
It says charge coupled device.
large couple device. Thank you.
Oh, okay, not Costco deli. Okay.
Thank you, Google.
Having a mental moment here. but anyways, the larger that is, the more sensitive it is. And also different companies are very well known for having better CCDs or making their own. And the ones who make their own, like I said, Sony, Fuji,
Nikon?
Panasonic makes their own CCD.
Panasonic. Oh, yeah.
And the Lumens.
Yeah. Other people buy their CCDs or have kind of not as great a ones. So you try to find a company that manufactures its own CCD.
Like, does Hasselblad do it, or we don't know about that?
Hasselblad has an interesting relationship. So one thing that they've made a big comeback. I'm not sure who they buy their CCD from, but my son has a OnePlus Pro
Cell phone, you mean?
cell phone. Amazing camera quality. It's the Hasselblad and the Zeiss optics. Zeiss makes their optics, but I do not know who makes their CCD. And it's funny, when I first went into the industry, we made a back for the Hasselblad camera. So
I always found it interesting. I always found it interesting because, in the moon, in the moonshot, the Apollo, they had Hasselblad cameras on the moon. I always thought that. So that to me, it was like, I need to get a Hasselblad camera because after all, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were shooting with Hasselblad. So
yeah,
who wouldn't want an astronaut camera?
And they're
So
still amazing for both for the lens quality, and I'm not sure who they're using for CCD, but believe me, it's going to be one of the better ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but for
I
streaming,
should know, but I don't.
Streaming. Yeah. We could keep
it's a
it
bit
simple.
Yeah,
exotic.
streaming. One of the best cameras. I
You have a
understand.
favorite Logitech, just regular webcam too, don't you?
I do have a favorite Logitech regular webcam. Don't ask me what the name of it is right
Like a
now. The
940
920, the C920.
C920.
920.
Yeah.
But if you want to get 4K quality, you can use the Brio. You can also use there's instructions online where you can use your iPhone as a webcam.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need a second webcam, you can go on and use your iPhone for that.
Oh, by the
Um,
way, just so
yeah,
for the people watching this video, don't worry about whether your camera supports 4K for streaming, since there are
Yeah.
very, very few, none that I know of really, consumer streaming platforms that will do 4K anyway for streaming. They'll
right.
usually cap
Yeah.
out at 1080. Zoom caps out at 720
Yep.
usually.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, I mean, you're buying way more capacity than the service you use will ever use. Or
Yeah, unless for some reason you're actually doing TV broadcasting,
yeah,
Like
in
your
which
Roku
case
channel. Yeah.
you do right a Roku channel, or you're going to be a featured station on Amazon or something like that, then you really do need to look at the 4K quality. It's funny how many people jump into that first. Don't let that be your guide, because it just doesn't make sense.
no.
I think Sony. Now, my friend Tom would probably come on here and disagree with me, because he actually looks at all these cameras. But Sony has a really cool little blogger camera for vlogging that's
Yeah,
just
it's this one.
amazing. It's a ZR
The
ZV1.
ZV1,
ZV1.
not the 100, which is a
Yeah.
future development.
Yeah.
So that is definitely one of the better, more reasonably priced cameras for this.
Definitely.
The other one is trying to think of it's a newer version of an older camera. It's something 500
Hmm.
SVR.
A Minolta?
It's a Sony,
Oh,
but Sony and Minolta are related
I didn't know that.
in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it's
It
actually
might be
time to wind down.
incestuous.
It's time to wind down. We've hit
I
our
was glad
30
I,
minutes.
glad I could show up just in time to
Yeah.
answer
Just in
all
time for
the
the mirrorless camera question.
difficult engineering questions.
Now that's been handled.
Oh,
All right,
Yeah,
that's it for today.
it's all we're done with you.
hey, the other thing that I was going to mention, though, there are a lot of, if you do use a really high-end camera, you've got Blackmagic and some of the connectors, which I know you're aware of, that can really help out a lot with producing better image quality and a better connection. So something
Okay.
else.
Only
to look
white
at
magic here, but
All right.
I appreciate the black magic.
anytime.
All right, that's it for us. We're back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Website Wednesday.
Yay!
Woohoo. Yay!
Please sit back and watch Dean do his magic.
Oh
That's
my!
right.
I think I finally got the little edit in place thing working for websites, so we'll be able to change
Cool.
people's headlines and stuff as we watch. I hope.
One of my
All
favorite
right.
things.
Adios.